Travel is more than just ticking off countries. It's about the people, the culture, the food, the moments. I'm Pippa Hudson, and on Wonder the World, I invite you to join me every week as we explore destinations both near and far, with the help of fellow adventurers who share their unique travel stories. Listen to my podcast wherever you get them.
702.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
I did say earlier on that we are coming live from the Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium South Africa 2025, and it's brought to you by Infrastructure South Africa, Building Resilient Communities. It's very easy for us to say, yes, it's another talk shop, but very critical. I mean, we look at Johannesburg and you realize that our infrastructure is aging. We always complain when things really break down. I mean, take our water infrastructure for an example. It lets us down when we need it the most, of course, and I suppose Minister Majodina will then call and say, but Thabo, we have just opened up the Lesotho pipeline, everything is all hunky-dory, that is all okay. But when things break down, it's when we realize that actually infrastructure is not what it ought to be. So that's why it's very important to be here. That's why it's very important to be here at this conference to understand what is really at stake, especially breaking down that R1 trillion from the minister about infrastructure in the midterm. Next 3 years. We want to hear all about that. And sitting in front of me, CEO Vanessa Baldwin from Cata Energy, and they are focusing on green transition in Africa. Ma'am, thanks for your time. Welcome to 702. Good morning.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. But firstly, perhaps tell us about Cata before we get into other things. What is it that you do there?
Cata Energy is a consortium of multiple renewable energy companies. These companies, of course, you have two that are South African based. You have one from Tanzania that's giving it the continental feel. We have a Zambian partner. You do have two companies, an asset management company from Austria called Enzegembeha, which is a part of us as well. And we do have other financiers on board that we partner with through the initiative that we're currently running with the African Union Development Agency. We have an MOU with them whereby we're pushing for how money can land differently in the African continent. And this is largely through private sector participation. This kind of pool brings a different attitude to how we are able to unlock funding. A lot of funding is pledged during large events, billions and trillions of dollars, but the mechanism for it to land in the African region, maybe I think about only 5 to 6% of that money actually lands in the African region. And that is what we have to change. And that is why we're here today. Part of the reason we're here today is to hear out the plans that are there, how we can make this better, but most importantly, the harmonization of policy reform and what we can actually do with private sector when it comes to implementation of projects, reducing those timelines, bringing in that efficiency. That is exactly what we're advocating for. At the same time, implementing when it comes to our project participation and execution.
I would assume your plans have to be consistent with the ones that the president is going to announce now, or he's busy announcing in that room as you and I are speaking right now.
Absolutely.
And funding is a critical issue because often it comes with conditions. Especially when you are looking at catalytic projects, energy, water, and others.
Absolutely.
More so if it comes from outside, there's a certain expectation. How do you really create that harmony between the private sector and government, and where there's policy in between that may be conducive or not conducive for the two to go together?
One thing I can tell you that we are seeing now, it's let's have that conversation, and not a conversation without action. Through the Africa Green Transition PPP Fund that we are currently working with the African Union Development Agency, which will be now the private sector arm of the African Union Development Fund. This will be a platform whereby private sector is able to participate, but you're going to see government get stronger because most of our utilities tend to be very weak, especially when you look at the energy sector from a financial standpoint. Changing that narrative, and also the aspect of bankability. What is bankable for Africa is not what's bankable for Europe, and it's not what's bankable for the US. And that is what we have to change. Now, you have, for example, the accreditation accreditation that you see with Moody's. Now, the African Union has come up with plans whereby they're changing that. They're bringing an accreditation for Africa and being able to give African countries that
specific
backup.
to that market,
yes,
and
to that
speaking
market.
to the
Exactly.
developing countries.
So this is where you see change, and it's not just we're not talking anymore. We're
Yeah.
implementing, we're acting, we are
Yeah.
making reforms, early stage participation. We have
Yeah.
a program that's running for that, where we're pushing financing into that, where we're looking at investors say, I'm going to come in from a very early stage
Yeah.
to actually fast track that process. Can you imagine we're looking at 6 to 8 years for a project to just be able to get off the ground? Things have to change, and that's
Yeah,
the conversation.
yeah.
Private sector is very good at doing that, and that's where we come in, and we're trying to make
And
a
the
difference.
number, sadly, of our countries on the continent are a bit slow on that front, because you'd be negotiating 10 years down the line, and governments change, and then you start conversations.
Visibility is outdated.
Exactly.
Money is wasted.
Yeah.
So to breach this gap, we have to make a difference. That
Yeah.
policy harmonization, along with efficiency that comes with private sector, is a very necessary thing for
I
us.
want to ask you before we run out of time, because
Yeah.
we will do so in the next 2-3 minutes or so. Your
Absolutely.
company is focused on renewable energy.
Absolutely.
What role can renewable energy play in Africa's development? Because we always hear about this buzzword,
Yes.
renewable energy, but
Now, let me tell you what Africa is. Africa is a bedrock of energy. When it comes to that sector, it's a billion-dollar industry. We have something with Audenepid called the Continental Master Plan. What we're pushing for is that green transition that is globally being pushed for, but we have no training for it. There is no capacity building that's being done for it. Even the money that, it's only 6% of that money that has landed in Africa
Yeah.
so far. So us coming in and being able to unlock our full solar potential, to unlock the aspect
Yeah.
of using mini grids, off-grid solar, if you're able to use the hydros, whether it's the small hydro dams or
Yes.
it's the larger ones, and being able to put floating solar on that to reduce the challenges that come with hydros that we're
Yeah.
seeing when the season dries out,
Yeah.
and also just being able to use the recycling new technology that's there for recycling the water in hydros, and being able to make them more efficient. When you look at the aspect of green, there's one thing that we cannot do without. We're not saying we should get rid of fossil fuels completely. That is
Yeah.
not realistic. But
It's
what
not
we're
feasible as well,
as
yeah.
well. But what we're saying is those fossil fuels, they could fund green energy and unlock Africa's true potential. We have the capability of being able to actually light up Africa. And if you look at it, if the African Continental Master Plan is able to be put in
Yeah.
effect, and you have the Africa Single Electricity Market,
Yeah.
whereby the Southern African Power Pool is trading with the East African Power Pool and the West African Power Pool,
Yeah.
the Cape to Cairo is achieved, and you actually see the
what
ability
is
of Africa
stopping
to trade.
all of that? I mean, you're very eloquent about those issues, but the stumbling blocks are there, and I'm wondering,
Yes.
how do we smooth them out? What are those stumbling blocks?
This is where you have it. Policy advocacy, policy harmonization, reforms that are there, whereby private sector is actively pushing for, and hand in hand working with governments, ensuring that this is possible. And I'm seeing that with the MOU now that we have running with the African Union, where
Yeah.
changes are being made. We are pushing forward. Private sector is supporting us and coming on board, but you also have institutions like the EU through the AUEU.
Yeah.
You might have heard of them, AEEP. Shout out to Dr. Tawela Nyarendra, amazing lady. She's the one who put together the Continental Master Plan and with Audenepid. And you see the push that's coming from there, and we see that this is possible. Policy harmonization and policy reform, and also strengthening our utilities is a very important thing. But we cannot do that without banking, especially on those mining corridors,
Yes.
banking on those PPAs to make sure the takeoffs are accurate.
Yes.
And they're actually, one thing we're doing is we're looking for impact in areas that do not necessarily have the financial capability to offtake that power.
Yes,
Now,
yes,
if you're able
yes.
to run that across those mining
Yeah.
zones and use their back balance sheets
Yeah.
to now leverage of private sector,
Yeah.
you're going to see the ability for you to actually power up, and
Yeah.
it will be a trickle-down effect whereby the local communities automatically benefit
Certainly.
from that.
Allow me to play devil's advocate, if you will, for just
Yeah.
two seconds, if you will.
Yeah.
To what extent will those governments, especially who don't have the immediate offtakes, who don't have
Yeah.
the immediate capital to fund those huge projects, and that may last about 20, 30 years being financed and so on, to what extent could they subsequently become slaves to a debt, which we are now afraid of?
Now,
And-
this is where I love this question.
Yeah.
You see, Africa is the one country, one continent whereby we are pushing for the aspect of debt being a factor.
Yeah.
But we're giving you solutions as private sector. We are coming in and saying, instead of you taking on debt, you can leverage off a bank balance sheet of one of the biggest mines. Let it be Mopani, let it be Barrick or whatever it is.
Yes.
That way, we are not using your bank balance sheet as a guarantee, but rather private sector bank balance sheets. And then from that, it's giving you the credibility to be able to take on this loan. Relatively, this project are able to be effected. The money is able to flow. And that's where the difference comes in. And then now you're looking at basically pure investment flowing into country by country, member state by member state, into the African continent, whereby since it's pure investment, now you're no longer thinking of debt. It's coming in and it's moving you from the red into the green.
Are we one of those countries that you're targeting?
Definitely.
10 seconds
you are the catalyst. South Africa is the catalyst country. This is why we're here. The president has been very, very vocal about private sector participation. They've given us the platform. Out in NEPAD, the main officers are here. They've given us the platform to do this. We have South African stakeholders that are working with us, and we're pushing this to make this a success.
Listen, I can talk to you for 2 hours non-stop, but we've run out of time.
Thank you so much.
Great. It's been so informative.
I
wanted us to dissect more issues because it's always enlightening when you're speaking to people who are informed about the subject matter, and funding is a serious problem in Africa, not just South Africa.
How many lands
investment
in Africa? Exactly.
And other countries may even take advantage of that by exploiting the resources, and you're indebted forever. But if we have a model that speaks to the nitty-gritties of who we are as a continent, it's better to facilitate.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You know, when I look at this and I'm hearing you speak, I'm very impressed. I'm very in tune with what you're saying, because one of the things that we do need is a continental drive from the African people, but as well as all the investment that is coming in. You cannot have repatriation just happening without impact. Impact investment is very vital, and us being able to leverage off these investment companies that are coming here and saying, all right, our utilities may be poor, you know, on the bank balance sheets, but yours are not, and this is where we can make a difference.
I'm gonna be fired if I don't go to the news right now, and so I don't think Cata has got a radio station to hire me.
Thank you so much for
really
your time.
Appreciate it.
I really do appreciate it.
It's been truly amazing. Vanessa Baldwin is CEO from Cata Energy.